My name is Nassine Saps.
If you happen to see green lasers in the sky, not to worry. It's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers conducting coastal surveys. And they're being done using a contracted aircraft equipped with a light detection and ranging system. The lasers are used to measure distance. Residents near Oahu south-facing shores between Barbers Point and Diamond Head might see those broad beams of green light across the night sky. It'll happen between midnight and 5 a.m. from Friday, April the 28th through the 30th. Officials say brief exposure to the light is not harmful to the unprotected eye.
Now to a very unusual sight captured on camera. Japanese and local astronomers say a Chinese satellite was recently seen beaming down green lasers over the islands. This video captured atop the Subaru telescope on Mauna Kea, operated by the National Astronomical Observatory of Japan. Bryce Moore has the story.
The lasers flash for just a couple seconds. Initially thought to be from a NASA altimeter satellite, the Japanese put out a correction note on Monday saying NASA scientists found a most likely candidate as the ACDL instrument by the Chinese Daki-1 AEMS satellite. I went to a University of Hawaii astronomer who read up on AEMS instruments.
It's a Chinese satellite that is measuring pollutants, among other things. It has many different instruments on it, some kind of topographical mapping, or they're also used for measuring stuff in the Earth's atmosphere. And I think that's what it is, to environmental measurement satellite.
I also sat down with the former chief of staff of Marine Forces Pacific. He had some questions.
I'm not sure, this is my opinion, why the Chinese, who are probably some of the most prolific polluters on the planet, would be collecting data on pollutants on this side of the Pacific.
Both experts say this isn't explicitly a spy satellite. It is cataloged and known by governments around the world.
The U.S. has satellites that do the same thing. So in this case, despite all of the flurry, well-deserved flurry about Chinese spy satellites and other devices, this one is just orbiting Earth and has a known orbit.
The footage was taken January 28th, before the recent incident where a Chinese balloon traversed over the mainland U.S. before being shot down off the coast of South Carolina. Which brings the question, how much is the Chinese military seeing?
They can shut down any communication nodes that they want if they believe that, I think, the public is getting too much information. So yeah, I think it's more probably military than anything else. That's makes sense.
I had to ask,
is this a risk to locals, to Hawaii?
So directed energy, basically laser beams. All the services are interested in them. They've been interested in them for decades, going back before the technology was even available. In most recent years, we've seen a lot of directed energy or laser projects geared at counter-drone options. The Army was equipping 5 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt and larger and higher, more powerful lasers on Stryker combat vehicles for testing in Europe, and of course here in the continental United States. The Air Force did a 2018 counter-drone laser rodeo in White Sands missile range, where they tried a whole bunch of different options from vehicle to stationary mounted lasers to take out drones. That's pretty well known, but there's some new projects coming up that are quite interesting for the Navy and the Air Force that are pretty big. First one up is Thor, not the mythical Norse god of thunder nor the Marvel Avenger character, but actually the tactical high-powered operational responder. It's a prototype piece of equipment from the Air Force Research Laboratory that is essentially geared toward hitting multiple targets, sometimes simultaneously. That item is a laser essentially that would hit all kinds of drones, different ranges, different powers, different altitudes. It's obviously a prototype, so it's going to take a little while to get it off the ground, but it could help solve that big drone swarm problem that a lot of strategists seem to be concerned with. The next one's another Air Force project, pretty interesting, pretty sci-fi, and I'm not going to rely on memory here, I'm going to read the acronym itself. It is the Space Solar Powered Incremental Development and Research Project, or SPIDER. They have a sub-project, I'm not even going to try to spell out, called Arachne. You get the theme. But essentially what it does is it takes solar power, 2 satellites that are going to collect that energy and then beam that energy through RF frequency to a forward operating base that will then collect it, transfer it back into power. So instead of having generators, convoys, and all the fuel that you would need for that, you literally are getting your energy from the sun through a satellite. The next one is from the Navy. It is the Directed Energy Systems Integration Lab. Now the lab broke ground earlier this year and is scheduled to open in December. It's essentially a lab built entirely around figuring out how to put lasers on ships, whether that's to hit drones, use weapons against other ships, maybe lasers for communications. There's all kinds of options. And this lab is actually going to have about a 36,000 square mile range for testing, and it's going to be testing all these different ideas, all these different concepts for the Navy. So the Air Force is looking at space, Air Force is looking at counter-drone, the other services are doing the same, mounting stuff on vehicles. So the technology is finally catching up with the science fiction, and there's options now for lasers across the military services. So a lot of them still in prototype phase, but we'll see what's going to happen. It's been Todd South of Military Times.
Okay, so that would be their invisible wave energy weapons, basically to cause heat and to burn. That's all that is. You know, they've had that since like the 1910s. Basically. That's why it just burns everything down. Because it's not normal fire. Like, it's not normal. It's invisible wave energy. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that. Oh, you know, if you look up the not the melting point of iron, but look up the dustification point of iron. It's different. So with the melting point, that's when iron turns into liquid. But with the dustification point, look up when iron turns into gas. And you see what temperature it has to be. That's the dustification point. Or when iron turns to gas. So I don't know off the top of my head when iron turns to gas.